Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, October 20th, 2016. We are almost ready for another show today. I see that the desktop computer indicates that that Skype is open and working, but it is not. So I need to force that to close here so that I can get my thumbs up signals from Justice, who, by the way, is there every day, every morning, unacknowledged very often, giving me the thumbs up, letting me know that everything is working properly. And so, well, I don't know. So I'm acknowledging it now. What do you want? Leave me alone. I'm not perfect. Okay, let's try and relaunch this thing. And we're also going to use it to bring Greg Dworkin in to help review that thing which was broadcast yesterday under the guise of debate. And it wasn't unlike the other two in the sense that the first few minutes of it sort of seemed like it was a debate, and then of course it degenerated into the usual Trump nonsense. and then of course both sides analysis following the event. Anyway, it was I guess no better or worse than the other ones in the sense that they were all dumpster fires, although yesterday he really underlined a point he's made in the past and that has been brought up in the past debates, and now Chris Wallace chose to highlight and underline, giving Trump another chance to say whether or not he believed we lived in a modern democracy or not, and that the election results ought to be accepted, and he just wouldn't take it. I think that was far and away the most widely recognized inflection point of the debate. Anyway, I don't think it's going to make any difference in the way people vote generally. It's not going to chase away Trump supporters. They actually believe this stuff, and spent the evening insisting that, Al Gore did the same thing in 2000. He likewise undermined everyone's confidence in democracy and urged armed supporters to rise up in open revolt if George W. Bush was installed as president. Of course, that did not happen, and there are many other differences between what happened in 2000 and what's being threatened now, and we'll get to them. But there were other important inflection points, a lot of people focusing instead on the nasty woman comment. We'll let Greg round all these things up. You know we're going to get to all of that stuff. But we may as well lay that one out there early this morning, too. I think there was a count out there of how many times Hillary was interrupted by, or how many times, I guess we should say, Donald Trump attempted to interrupt. And some of the attempts at interrupting were really just his usual attempt at injecting a word or an objection. Wrong, or so wrong, so untrue, that's a lie. And then, of course, the nasty woman comment. And as Greg Sargent pointed out this morning, that is also essentially the culmination of a long-running dialogue from all the debates. Basically, the idea of, hey, you didn't pay your taxes, and Trump saying, well, that makes me smart. And say, well, that's because you try to evade your taxes all the time. Oh, you're so nasty for pointing that out. And he had quite a grin on his face when he delivered that one. I think he was very proud of himself because I believe that one was rehearsed. They practiced that one, and he was going to use the such a nasty woman line somewhere in there, which I'd love to know who thought that would test well. Maybe he ad-libbed it, but he was really pleased with himself for throwing that one in. Seems like he was waiting for an opportunity to do that. And, all right, well, the consequences, we'll see what they are. Okay. Let's acknowledge also someone else who's there each morning for us. Not every morning. Like sometimes he's busy writing his own feature in the morning. Bill in Portland, Maine lets everyone know Daily Coast Radio is live now. KagroX. That's how you can reach me. Via email, by the way, if you put that Gmail thing at the end after the little squiggly sign. And I know what the squiggly sign is called. Come on, we're having fun here. Or use it on Twitter. That squiggly sign at KagroX. See? Daily Kos Radio is live now, and I'm going to call Greg Dworkin, who you can reach on Twitter as Dem from Connecticut, CT, the postal abbreviation. I call him a nasty man. Hilarity ensues eventually. We'll get around to it. I haven't been hilarious yet, so we'll see whether we make a liar out of Bill or not. Okay, so, gosh, there's a lot to round up. And, Greg will be here in a few minutes to help us do it. The morning's takeaway has been, Mark Halperin pretty much thinks everybody does everything. It's both sides issue for him. He was on the, somewhere this morning, I see him quoted as, what was his line? I had it here for a second. Anyway, he basically, I think, was going along with the idea of both sides having engaged in this sort of undermining of confidence in our electoral system. And, I don't know that really backs itself up. I had it on, it was nice. It was on screen a second ago, and then one of you people on Twitter said something, and then it was all gone. So I'll scroll back a little bit and see if I can't find it, and maybe Greg can help me here. Okay, I've found it, but now I've got, now I had to hit the Skype button, so everything's gone again. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. So I was watching Halperin on Morning Joe.
You saw it, okay.
Which was a remarkable show.
That's a remarkable combination.
Because they were doing their best to defend Trump's anti-democratic comment.
Yes.
And trying to parse words about, he didn't really say he wouldn't accept the results of the election. He said he wouldn't say he would accept the results at this time.
Okay, sure. I didn't.
You got that, right?
Yeah.
So what Halperin said as well, all the elites are really upset about this, but that's the elites. How other people respond is a completely different story.
Oh, yeah.
Only elites think that democracy is important.
Right. Not everybody has been trained that way. I'm calling, I'm waiting to hear back from Colin Kaepernick any minute here. I think he ought to see that and ought to absorb that lesson. And next time he takes a knee and people cry, he can say, it's because you're elites.
Right. Well, let's just go through some of the data here, which I think is important. Steve Casala, who runs the Mass Inc. poll and does this for WBUR up in, I think, Boston, has a chart. It's one of the last pieces I have that I Skyped over to you so you can take a look at. And he's got 16 different post-debate polls over the 3 debates, and Clinton has won each and every one of them, and last night was no different. YouGov says Clinton won 49-39, CNN says 52-39, and there was even a CBS battleground state poll, which is not included because it's not national.
Yeah.
I asked Steve about that, and he said, well, he wants to, compare apples to apples. So CBS Battleground Tracker says, by a double-digit margin, voters in 13 states identified as battlegrounds by CBS News says Hillary Clinton won the final presidential debate of the 2016 campaign. 49% say Clinton won, 39% think Trump was the winner, 12% call it a tie. Immediately after the debate, they interviewed likely voters, and to get the reaction, more Democrats and Republicans tuned into the debate, but it was closer than in previous debates. 35% of the debate watchers described themselves as Democrats, 28% Republican, 35% independents. And during the debate, Trump would not commit to accepting the results of the election, something most debate watchers in the battleground states think the candidate should pledge to accept. On nearly all of those who supported Clinton heading into the debate said the candidate should pledge to accept. Views among Trump backers were more mixed. 33% said the candidate should accept the results. 36% say the candidate should not make that pledge. Another third don't have an opinion. So a third of Trump supporters think that he's right because he said it, so they'll support anything he says.
Okay.
And there were some really good lines in there beyond that. You mentioned a couple. Yeah, the nasty woman one I think is going to resonate. Trump not committing to in advance accept the results of the election is going to resonate. And then there was the bad hombre one.
Yes, that did
resonate. Bunch of bad hombres. The puppet one, though, is especially funny.
Yeah.
If you have the chance to actually go back and look at that.
Puppet. I saw that one.
What happened
no, you didn't.
is that Trump was talking about the fact that Putin doesn't respect that one. It was one of those, John McCain about Obama
boy,
kind of
you have to pause
comment.
for that one.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
Well, don't forget that was at the Alfred E. Smith dinner, which is humorous, and I think supposed to happen this week, which will be weird to see the two of them try to make fun of each other.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. That's going to be a spectacle. But
that's as much a debate.
It was actually McCain at
yes.
the Alfred E. Smith, and the writing for that is usually superb, and it can be quite funny. And McCain said, when Obama was on Oprah, they kept referring to him as the one.
Yes.
But, of course, I've known him in Congress, and to me, I just call him that one.
Uh-huh.
And it was funny at the time. In context, Obama thought it was hysterical, and that's where that came from. But there was kind of a similar, not-so-funny aside during the debate when they were starting to talk about Putin. And Trump said Putin obviously doesn't respect that one, that person over there.
Yeah.
That thing that I have to acknowledge.
Yeah, he really wanted to say that woman. I think
it's called a woman, but I don't want to do that. And that was the tone.
Yes.
And Clinton just smiled and looked at him and said, well, that's because Putin doesn't want a puppet. Clinton doesn't want me as president. He would rather have a puppet as president. And Trump was really stung. And Clinton goes on to say a few other things. And in Alec Baldwin fashion, Trump keeps mumbling into the microphone, "You're the puppet. No, you're the puppet. You're the puppet.
Really
no, you're the puppet." He did it 3 or 4 times.
I was waiting for a nuh-uh.
Yeah, pretty much. So you asked, who is writing these, nasty woman asides to the microphone? Alec Baldwin is.
Yeah.
He's the one that's giving him this stuff. It's perfect material for this coming Saturday.
I guess so. That's really, it's pretty amazing that one happened. But yeah, he really did what he wanted to say, that woman. And I guess if you're looking to credit him with anything, you could hear the gears turning where he was saying,
don't say it. I'm thinking it. Don't say it.
And and actually it wouldn't have been the worst thing he said all night, but somehow that, made it worse. It highlighted the fact that he was, that's his shackling right there. Oh, I'm shackled. I don't want to say that woman. But yeah, there was an awful lot about last night's debate that was terrible. and I'll tell you what, I was a lot less discouraged by the debate than the post-debate discussion. I definitely had to turn off, and I was looking for more. And when I got to the CNN post-debate thing, I said,
did you see it? Did you see Van Jones?
I did, and yeah.
That was actually pretty funny.
And then I saw
Van Jones said, may I, for your listeners and readers, said, you can't polish this turd, and Anderson Cooper, fact-checking Van Jones, had to interrupt him and say, technically you actually can't polish a turd.
He doesn't know about turd shellacking.
It was
actually okay, right. Well, it got turd on the air twice.
Because we said we're not going to fact check.
Right.
That will fact check.
That's true. Well, yeah. So, but Van did a great job with that, and then of course it spun out of control. Everybody began getting really angry, and
that's because Jeffrey Lord was part of the panel.
Who was they had a different woman who I didn't recognize.
That was, I forget her name, Kaylee Mc-something or other.
I was
Harvard
just getting
lawyer.
Used to Scotty, whatever her name is.
She's on NBC.
One.
No, you're right. She's on CBS. That's the one that Anna Navarro usually takes on. This was Scotty Ann Hughes.
Was it?
But this was somebody different. This was, and again, I don't watch CNN deliberately because Jeffrey Lord and Corey Lewandowski are on, and I hate watching a channel that would hire Corey Lewandowski. But I think her first name is Kaylee.
All right. I think you're right.
She's another, hired weasel. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Their job is to defend Trump no matter what he said. And David Axelrod was just shaking his head and said, listen, I'm a political consultant. I understand spin. This was a disaster for Trump last night. It just was. He didn't accomplish the things that he needed to do. He's already down by 7. You needed to have a game-breaking, game-changing, gigantic win. He didn't do that. If anything, he hurt himself more. It was just a complete and total disaster.
Yeah. It was very... Well, it really was disastrous, and she was particularly bad, I think, last night. They really put their surrogates in an impossible place.
Kayleigh McEnany, McEnany. That's
like a joke spelling of that. first
Education, St. Edmund Hall, Oxford, Georgetown University, Harvard Law School, just goes to show you.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. She's been led to water. She's just still thirsty.
Well, she was the one that Van Jones was unloading on when he said you can't polish that turd.
Right. I mean, yeah, she was trying to essentially. I think she was at the moment trying to defend the I'll tell you later. I'll tell you when the time comes. I'll keep you in suspense lines. And she and Jeffrey Lord were actually. It was like they were prepared for. Well, what are we going to say afterwards if our candidate says he doesn't accept American democracy? Okay, I better have some points ready. Well, neither did Al Gore. That's the direction that they went, which, you know.
So did Rudy Giuliani in the spin room. It's really kind of interesting because that's exactly what they had all set up.
They were ready for that, which is amazing. That's the, I guess, the undiscussed angle on this is that the Trump surrogate team was prepared for what do we do if our candidate rejects American democracy on stage? Well, okay, right. Ordinarily I don't prepare for that, but I guess we'd better.
So this is a different one. This is Scotty Nell Hughes, the other one that you were talking about.
Yes, okay.
And it's a piece by Olivia Nuzzi in GQ.
All right.
The desperate gamble of Scotty Nell Hughes, world's most loyal Trump surrogate. That might be Bill Mitchell, actually, but you know, we'll forgive the hyperbole there. Like the rest of Trump's devoted street team, Hughes spends her days evangelizing the Donald with a relentless series of appearances on TV. But why? And what if he loses? So that's the thrust of it. And it has the great piece where Ana Navarro and she were just going after the comments that Trump made on the Billy Bush bus tape. And it was great. So, you know, Hughes couldn't help going full Leave It to Beaver on CNN, noting repeatedly, I'll skip whether that's a pun or not, noting repeatedly that the news of the Trump tape was an opportunity to discuss the dangers of vulgar language. Her plaintive plea seemed to be, can't we all just be polite and elect Trump? This incongruous take did not, as you probably could guess, go over very well among those who joined her on air, particularly Ana Navarro, a Republican strategist and, like Hughes, a CNN, quote, contributor, end quote. With the cameras rolling, Navarro, who hates Trump, decided to frequently repeat his words, specifically the one that we can't say on the air, in order to underscore their outrageousness. Each time she did, Hughes' eyes widened cartoonishly in horror. I have the video of that, and it is just hysterical. Yes. I think every single Republican's going to have to answer for what did you do the day you saw the tape of this man boasting about grabbing a woman's. Navarro said. Hughes grimaced. She'd had enough. Will you please stop saying that word? My daughter is listening, and that's all Navarro needed. At this point, had the two women been in the same studio, Don Lemon's show might have turned into a kind of celebrity death match. Don't tell me you're offended when I say this, but you're not offended when Donald Trump says it. I'm not running for president. He is. If I recall, maybe that was the occasion she did it. She said, you don't like it? I'm going to tell you that in 2 different languages.
Yeah, that's true. And you forget that you make a, you know what? Here's the best point. You reminded us all, she's a Republican. Mm-hmm. People have forgotten that this cycle. People have I've been surprised every time I'm reminded of it. Oh my gosh, that's right.
Yep.
That's weird. Because, I mean, not only has she, there's plenty of never Trumpers, but I mean, she breathes fire about him every time, and really, she's
offended by the racism, particularly about Mexicans are rapists and all that sort of stuff.
Well, yeah,
takes it kind of personally.
She ought to be, and well, that's good to see. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make me feel any better about Republicans, but it's interesting. What can I tell you?
Well, she's one of the never Trumpers that we have temporary alliance with.
But that's true.
At least for 3 weeks.
And I mean, but I guess she's been the best one, is what
she
I'm
has,
saying.
Because she's been totally outspoken about it and calling out her fellow, quote, Republicans, end quote, air quotes.
Polite, never Trumpers who I think you can just too easily see them rolling over.
Right, she's not rolling over.
Okay.
Anyway, Will Jordan from YouGov has this little chart that he put together. When Donald Trump talks about the election being stolen due to fraud, he's mostly talking to his base. Among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, if you are very favorable to Donald Trump, then you think 75% of them think that fraud is very likely. 75%. Another 20% think it's likely. 95% of those who are very favorable to Donald Trump think that fraud is likely or very likely.
They do think that. That's true. I saw somebody commenting that now the question for every member of Congress, every Republican member of Congress now running, can now shift from, do you approve of what he said to Billy Bush to do you think the elections are being stolen? And I guess the follow-up question would be, should we trust your results? I'd love to know whether Republican incumbents seeking re-election, who in all likelihood will be declared the winner on November 8th, well, I'd like to know right now.
Relatively early in the evening.
Yeah, I'd like to know right now whether we should be doubtful about their results or not, or whether they're only messing with the presidential election, which would be the far more difficult to rig.
If you are unfavorable to Donald Trump among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents, still 36% think it's likely or very likely that the election result of voter fraud, which is still a horrible number. And if you're a non-Republican leaner, it's 23% who think it's very likely or likely that if Hillary Clinton wins, it's due to voter fraud. So anywhere between, certainly it's the majority of Republicans, but even if you're not inclined to favor Donald Trump, a third to a quarter of that group think that if Clinton wins, it's fraud.
Okay.
Which is horrible. And he's encouraging it, and that's why the elites, which is to say everybody in this country that cares about democracy, is rather offended by this.
Yes. And wink, wink, take your guns to the polls.
Yeah. And the fascinating thing is, and I get annoyed because I don't think that they're representative in any way or sense, just like I don't think that undecided voters at this point are representative in any way or form. It's a good reminder that moderate voters aren't in the least bit moderate about their views. They usually have an extreme view on one side and an extreme view on the other side. When you add them all up and average them, they're moderate. People who are undecided at this point generally have pretty wide-ranging views as to why they are. Again, the Ken Bone phenomenon, which is now faded, thank goodness.
What was that phenomenon? Okay.
Look, I like him a whole lot better than I like Joe the Plumber. But the whole idea that Bone had said is I'm undecided because personally my job would be helped by Donald Trump's policies. And as far as the country goes, that's terrible. And so I'm undecided because I have to decide whether it's country over personal or personal over country. And that is his dilemma, and that's why he's undecided.
I wish he would talk to me.
A lot of people are in that situation in the sense that they have a clear idea of why Trump is a disaster, but for whatever reasons, including the fact that they believe the garbage that they read all the time about the Clinton Foundation being corrupt, even though they don't know much about the Clinton Foundation, and think Donald Trump is the more honest of the two because he tells you that he's a jerk and a racist and he hates women and doesn't respect them. Therefore, he's more honest.
Except as he says the opposite.
But he tells you, he's pretty transparent about how he feels about this.
He signals it, yeah. But that's an amazing. I mean, I know that why people come to that conclusion. It's wrong, but yeah, to stand there and say he's so honest that he lies.
When you're looking at, and that's your focus group,
okay.
You're going to get some really odd, bizarre answers. So Frank Luntz had one. This is well summed up by Byron York. I was following it real time on Luntz's Twitter feed last night. And Clinton certainly had some home run answers, particularly on abortion when she talked about Roe v. Wade, and Trump talked about judges and Supreme Court appointments. That was the first question that opened up the debate, which was substantial, at least in the first couple of minutes.
Yeah, sort of.
And Trump had the conservative line, and Clinton had the liberal progressive line in terms of answers to a lot of these policy things. And so people would look at the debate and say, well, it's kind of a split. Trump is doing well because he's articulating conservative principles, and we're conservatives and we like this. And, same thing for Clinton on the other side. Until this whole thing about elections came up and Putin puppet came up and all that sort of stuff. But when you're looking at the focus group, what they found that Clinton's answers on abortions were terrific. They preferred Trump's answers on the economy. They did not, the way elites did, freak out over Trump's anti-democratic statements about we'll have to wait and see whether I accept the election. Although I would point out that this is why focus groups are terrible in trying to figure out the impact of this. because you have to go back to that same focus group, show them the same answer, show them the same tape, do the same dial thing a week from now, after it sinks in, after they appreciate what was said, after they see the reactions from everybody, and then decide whether or not it's important. But in any case,
take a while.
The thing that bothered them more than anything else had nothing to do with the anti-democratic stuff. It's when he said "nasty woman."
Yeah,
they hated that, and that was like
basic.
The worst thing for Trump. The best thing for Clinton was her answer on abortion. The worst thing for Trump was "you're a nasty woman."
All right.
And then Nicole Wallace on NBC said, she was talking to moms because her focus group is moms.
Okay.
And, they didn't really care about any of the policy stuff. They just didn't like it when Trump was nasty.
Well, a lot of people don't vote.
This is who votes, and so their votes count as much as your vote or my vote. And I'm just saying that, there's a lot of reasons why Clinton won the debate, but it's not necessarily the same reason for everybody who looked at the debate and saw it.
That's always going to be true. It is a little disheartening, though, when it's something as basic as... you
think.
You know what? I don't pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
Right, and on the morning shows, to hear Morning Joe, that's the one I chose to watch. You can't watch them all at the same time. And I like the guests. That's why I watch. Why do you keep watching Morning Joe? Why don't you just turn it up? Because I want to watch the guests, and I won't watch CNN because they have Lewandowski on. So I wanted to see what they had to say. Mm-hmm. And basically, it was an apologia for Trump's comments, saying he didn't really mean what everybody heard him say. Because let me parse the meaning of the difference between not accepting the result and saying that I'm not ready to accept the result.
Yeah.
Because in the end, he'll accept the result. How does Joe Scarborough know that? Because Trump's his friend and he just knows it.
Well, it's good to know that he knows.
Yeah, and besides, everybody else is saying it. Kellyanne Conway saying it, and Mike Pence sort of said it, except he didn't say it at all. In the spin room, Pence actually defended Trump's comments. So Pence is just as bad as Trump as a reminder to people, and a whole lot worse in regard to policy, just as a reminder to people. And the elites hated it. And the headlines that I had today on the pundit roundup at the very, very top of the page, Trump won't commit to accepting vote if he loses. Trump refuses to say he will accept election results. Clinton calls it horrifying. Trump refuses to say whether he'll accept election results. Trump won't say if he will accept election results. These are banner headlines across the entire, for example, Wall Street Journal. Where it takes up all the space. You don't usually have big headlines like that unless you're, declaring war or somebody's assassinated or stuff like that. These are like, big boy headlines here. And, that will matter. And
you're right.
It's always going to be...
It'll take a week, but you're right.
Yeah, it's going to take a week to sink in. And then you go back and you look and you say, what difference does this make? It makes a lot of difference, only you can't tell that now. And by the way, he's already losing. And by the way, he already lost the debate for other reasons.
Yes. Well, okay. I mean, I like the... I'll take away the point that there will be people who reacted differently and who were more concerned with nasty women last night.
Well, you can see right away. It doesn't take a lot to process that.
Right. That's exactly it. There's no processing necessary. For the rest of the folks on the question of whether or not you would accept the election results, a lot of people, I mean, there really is room for saying, well, I don't really know what kind of craziness is going to happen, and I'd like to know before I get to answer you, but yeah, it'll take a week, but people will convince them eventually. Well, the answer is, of course I accept the election results. If there's some bizarre thing that happens, we'll address that at the time. But do elections work? Yes, of course. But no, he didn't say that. He couldn't. He didn't know how. He didn't want to. It would be backtracking for him, so no.
Right. And so, same as Al Gore. Well, no, exactly the opposite of Al Gore. Thank you very much for bringing it up. So, what else happened? Well, he sniffed a lot during the debate, and it was hard not to notice. What else happened?
Well.
He had these policy, kind of subdued, low energy, but rational and not insane Trump for the first 20 minutes, and he's done this in all three debates, and then about 25, 30 minutes into it, the drugs wear off, and then he goes nuts.
Right.
And so, then he starts losing it, and Clinton was very aggressive, but quietly aggressive with a smile, needling him about all this stuff. I gave you the example of the puppet stuff, which really set him off. She brought up, Machado, the Miss Universe, was it? For that. He brought up other stuff. She brought up other stuff. He obviously didn't like it. people will look at him and say, well, he gave his strongest performance of the three. That's because the first one was a disaster and the second one wasn't so great. So on balance, it probably was. If you're looking at the CNN polls, I think he went something like, I don't have them in front of me, but he went like 29% thought he won to 39% thought he won, successively getting a better result in the three debates, all of which, by the way, are losses. And the funny thing is the 53-39 result from this last CNN snap poll, which, of course, had to be digested on air when it was given to them by Jeffrey Lord and the Trump surrogates, which is always fun to see. That result, 53-39, might well be the result of the election. And why do I say that? It's not that the polls are predictive of the result of the election, but by the third debate, people who are already deciding what they're going to vote see the debate and they see what they want to see. So the Clinton supporters are going to say she won, and the Trump supporters are going to say he won. And how many Clinton supporters are there and how many Trump supporters are there? Well, that's what that poll is telling you.
That's probably the greatest value of the debate at this point.
Yeah. So here's yet another poll saying that Clinton's probably up by about 14 points, which, by the way, fits a lot of the other polls that came out, which said that Clinton was up by double digits.
Yeah.
So his free fall has not changed yet. There was a really interesting graph that Jamison Foser put up yesterday. I had it in one of the tweets that I was sending around. That if you look at the Real Clear Politics a graph for how Trump versus Clinton is doing, okay, and if my screen would please stop bouncing around. When you go to a website and then it loads and you're about to click on something and then an ad loads to just push the place that you're going to click 2 inches lower.
Well,
this happens all the time. So let me just show you this.
All right.
This is the Real Clear Politics graph for who's ahead. And I'm going to bring your attention to approximately October 2nd. So you could scroll along.
Wait a minute. I have to tell them I'm not signing up for their newsletter.
Yes, please. Don't do that.
Okay. Where are we? Oh, the graph. Okay. October 10th. I got to find the date. I got to scroll.
Well, if you hover over it.
Oh.
Toward the end,
October,
it'll tell you the date.
October 10th.
And
yes.
Okay. So go to October 2nd.
Oh. All right. October 1, 3, 2. Okay. 2. Yes.
October 2.
Oct 2. Yes.
Oct 2. You see it?
Right.
All right. And then you see what happens after that when Trump's numbers plunge in a straight line down?
Yes.
Okay, may I point something out?
Yes, please.
October 2nd was the date of the vice presidential debate that everybody said Pence won.
Oh. Huh?
And you remember I was making the point that it didn't help the campaign. Kane won. It doesn't matter what they think, that Pence looked presidential and had presidential hair, right?
Yes.
Because the point was Kane skewered him and forced Pence to say, I can't defend anything Donald Trump says. And Kane said, but you're asking us to vote for him.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that mattered from that debate. I said that at the time. And then continue the down slope of that line, because it's straight down until October 15th. Okay? And then what happened in the intervening time? The second vice presidential debate. Remember? That was the one where people said, oh, well, Trump stopped the bleeding.
Oh, the second presidential debate. Yes, all right.
The line keeps going down.
It does.
There is no Pence won. There is no Trump stopped the bleeding. Trump's numbers have continuously dropped from October 2nd till October 15th. Hit a low in this particular poll, 41.4. Now it's up to 42.1, partially driven by Rasmussen, which they include, and LA Times, USC tracking.
All right.
Which is a tie when the average here is about 6.4 for Clinton in this particular poll. The Huffington Post pollster average is closer to 48-41, so it's more like a 7-point lead. And, latest polls, Quinnipiac, Clinton +6, YouGov, Clinton +4. Oh, here's one, IBT Tip, which did have Trump +1, now has Clinton +3.
Oh.
The most recent polls, Fox Clinton +7, Bloomberg Clinton +9, Ipsos, again, Clinton +4, UPI, C-Voter, Clinton +5, Monmouth, Clinton +12, CBS, Clinton +11, NBC SurveyMonkey, Clinton +8. These are just the recent ones from the 16th onward. So Clinton's doing quite well, and none of the stuff that everybody says was a game changer and stop the bleeding and this guy, none of that has really mattered.
Yeah.
This is pretty much socked in now. And so now we've got yet another day out of the way, and we've gotten all the events that Trump, in scare quotes, had under his control, end quote, gone from the schedule. And he's losing badly.
That's a bad thing if you are running that campaign.
Well, if you want to win.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's an open question.
It is an open question. Larry Sabato's crystal ball today with 19 days to go. Clinton's lead is bigger than ever. Arizona leans Hillary Clinton. McMullen rises in the West, threatening Trump in Utah. And maybe Idaho. We don't know. Somebody pointed out, there hasn't been any Idaho polls, so we don't really know how McMullen is doing there and how Trump is doing there. And may I point out that if you are asking how the Republican is doing in Idaho with 19 days to go, the election is not going well for you.
Well, I'll keep you in suspense.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let you know at the time. So what do they have? They have the latest crystal ball electoral college ratings. Oh, thank you,
Here
Abby.
it is. It got to the door.
Yeah, somebody's here. Hang on.
Delivering the latest poll. We'll go find out. It's the Chuck Wagon. Woo! You remember that? Is that? Do they still sell that dog food?
Which one?
It's too old school. The Chuck Wagon.
Chuck Wagon. Yeah.
Is that gone? Now you got to get locally sourced artisanal dog food. They have a refrigerated dog food section now.
Oh, wonderful. Anyway, so they have Clinton has 352 electoral votes as of this morning, and 13 toss-up states, including Utah and Iowa. Plus Maine 2. Those are the toss-ups. Right? And then Trump has 173. Maine. It's pretty funny.
Utah, Iowa, and all right, well, probably half of Maine.
Yeah,
okay.
And half of Maine.
It's sad, but okay. Hey.
Those are the toss-ups. Everybody else has been assigned.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. Well, it looks to be a bit of an electoral blowout.
And here's the sweet part. Arizona is blue.
That's pretty good.
North Carolina's blue. Florida's blue. Ohio is blue.
Good job.
Wisconsin, New Hampshire, they're all blue.
Yeah. What was that? He did something
half
about
Nebraska's
that.
blue.
Oh, that's true. They split
Whatever we lose in Maine, we get back in Nebraska.
That's good.
Thank you, Warren Buffett. That's the Omaha area.
He did I need to borrow the line from the end of the debate where Trump said something like, good job, Hillary.
Something like that. So let me finish up with first read this morning.
Yes.
NBC. I just want you to know my view here isn't like totally biased. Like I'm so liberal leaning, I can't really see the forest for the trees, and I'm a complete partisan. And got my rah-rah pom-poms on, as I was accused this morning by one of our commenters on Daily Kos.
Do we rah-rah?
Not really. This is really what the data says. So this is NBC's first read. Chuck Todd, Mark Murray, and Kerry Dan. Why the GOP should be worried about last night's debate.
All right.
For Republicans, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, who are looking to hold on to their congressional majorities in November as Donald Trump sinks in the polls, the first 15 to 20 minutes of last night's presidential debate couldn't have gone any better. Donald Trump, unlike in his first two debates, played the part of generic GOP presidential candidate, talking up his support for gun rights and opposition to abortion. But the debate went off the rails for the GOP when Trump refused to say he would accept the election results.
That did happen.
I'll look at it at the time, Trump said.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time, I'll keep you in suspense. Down ballot, Trump's statement could potentially hurt Republicans for two reasons. One, it's going to force fellow Republicans to respond to Trump and break with him on this issue, exposing yet another fissure inside the GOP. See our list below. And remember, a party that's divided never helps up and down the ticket. And two, all this talk about a rigged election could depress Republican turnout, which isn't a good thing for vulnerable House and Senate GOP candidates, which is, again, where our focus needs to be, down ballot. So Lindsey Graham said Mr. Trump is doing the party and country a great disservice by continuing to suggest the outcome of the election's out of hands and rigged against him. If he loses, it will not be because the system is rigged, because he failed as a candidate. And then House race Representative Carlos Corbello, peaceful transfer of power and acceptance of election results is fundamental to our democracy and constitution. This cannot be undermined ever. Now, Pence said conflicting things. He did say to Hallie Jackson, I know he'll absolutely accept the outcome of the election. If the vote is fair, I'm confident we'll accept it.
Yeah.
That caveat is important. And then he went on to defend what Trump had said, which is not acceptable.
Right.
Right? Reince Priebus said, I think he's going to accept the results because he's going to win.
Oh.
So therefore, you don't have to worry about it. And that's what Kellyanne Conway said. Don't ask me about accepting the results. Of course he will. He's going to win.
Yeah. Well, that's
channeling their inner Baghdad Bob.
I mean, it's the best answer you can give when your candidate says,
but Ryan and McConnell are going to be pressed on this. Every single Republican candidate is going to be pressed on this. That's another couple of days out of the news cycle. And there's no other big events that Trump can do. And by the way, can I just point out that nobody, absolutely nobody, is talking about who Trump brought to the debate last night.
That's correct.
Who cares? It had no relevance whatsoever. Didn't at the time. Some filler stuff to talk about until the debate actually happened. Off the news pages. Nobody cares.
It didn't make a difference. It didn't make a dent. No network that I am aware of showed any of them during the debate.
And by the way, let me just throw in, Gloria Allred, I think, is going to come out with another accuser today. And there'll be other things, perhaps. There's still Oppo dumps to come between now and November 8th when we actually do the election thing. So that's where it stands right now. It was an interesting debate that really didn't change anything, except that it put Trump's fascist tendencies in stark relief to the point where it's going to be hard for the Republicans to run away from it. And even if they wind up hiring the professional weasels to explain away the words, it's still not going to help them gain voters that they didn't already have. And so therefore he loses, and we'll have to see what happens down ballot. And in that sense, it's exactly where we were yesterday morning when we last spoke.
All right. Well, that was a good place to be. I don't mind saying there.
With that, this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. We enjoy talking to each other, which is the same as me saying that every once in a while I let him get a word in edgewise. But, remember, I'm from New York City. If I'm not interrupting you, it means I'm not listening. Such
a lie.
Such a lie. But I'm a nasty man.
Yes.
So thanks again. And if you're listening, download podcast. I enjoyed listening to you talk with Joan yesterday. I got a chance to listen to it later. That's how I do it. The first part is live, and the second part I do by podcast. But however you do it, we're happy that you listen and that you indulge us. So from my friend, David Waldman, Kagro in the morning, listen to the rest of the show, see where he's going to go. He's got a lot of stuff he could talk about, and there'll be stuff he does talk about. We'll see what it is later. And I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again.
Okay. We should probably continue to do it even after that, but we'll wait for Monday on that score.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. Thanks. You do the same. And you're very nasty. As Bill predicted, I would say about you. This is it's been a day. I will say that. And let me see. I just, for some reason, I am distracted once again by something that Ann Coulter is doing, which I try not to get to do. I was just sort of offhandedly watching a tweet go by about her. Politico tweeting Ann Coulter's statement, "I didn't get the gene that makes me care about what other people think." Which is hilarious because, of course, she said it on a publicity tour for her new book, which, okay, obviously you do because that's how you make your money. But I'm glad that she's getting around to her genetic inferiority, and it wasn't going to be me that said it. I just, but I'll point it out. Okay. So, anyway. I want to get that one out there dude, for the record. Anyway, so picking up with the themes of the morning, let's see. There was also there has also been, not directly as a result of the debate, but over the last day or two, that's been the theme that what was it now? I've already lost my train of thought on this thing, but the idea that I'm completely blanking about what it was I wanted to say. But just prior to the debate, we began. It was one of those recurring themes, and it brings to mind the idea of the obligatory stories about this or that party now have to show that they can govern or something. It's almost along those lines. And now I can't remember. It was the last comment, one of the last comments that Greg made on his way out the door that, gosh, I'm totally blanked on this. Well, if I had another co-host, if Armando comes on here and carries the show for 5 minutes, I'll be able to think of it. Maybe it'll occur to me before we close things out. But anyway, we can go on to other reactions to the debate I was sharing last night and this morning. This particular response to the Jeff Lord and Rudy Giuliani line about, Al Gore challenged the results of the election, and so it's all the same. Both sides do it. There's nothing unusual about Donald Trump answering the question the way he did, given that Al Gore didn't accept the election results in 2000, except, of course, in the end he did. And I suppose you could say, well, in the end, Al Gore Donald Trump very well may. But, of course, we're being kept in suspense. And, of course, I don't think that there's any chance that on October 19th, had you asked Al Gore, will you accept the results of the election, he would have said, I'll tell you later. But okay, everyone, that was the talking points they provided to everybody, which again is amazing that they even had talking points. The amazing thing is that they had prepped everybody for what to do in the case he rejected democracy entirely. And the answer is to both sides it. And nothing could be, I don't know. I mean, Republicans clearly see it this way, although, again, somebody else pointed out on Twitter earlier, and I now recall that essentially Republicans are comparing their candidate to a man that they thoroughly despise, Al Gore. Well, it's okay because Al Gore something, so we're going to do that and more. And, of course, as I said, there's plenty of footage. The whole world got to see Al Gore take the floor of the House, or the Speaker's rostrum in the House, as President of the Senate and preside over his acceptance formally of the election results. That's an unusual circumstance driven, of course, by the fact that he was Vice President and therefore President of the Senate at the time, and constitutionally that's how we count the electoral votes. So it wasn't like he went out of his way to do it or chose some special forum to do it. He had to do it, but that's it. He had to do it. And he did. I guess he could have said, to hell with the Constitution, to hell with everything. I'm not going. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to accept it. And remember that there were Democrats, House Democrats on the floor, begging him not to. And he, in turn, was calling everybody and begging them that they had to. And he successfully persuaded every single Democratic senator not to take the bait, even as much as I would have been interested in seeing them do it, actually. Because, I always wanted to get to the bottom of this stuff, too. But, okay, Al Gore is the kind of person, for better or for worse, who says, look, this is the system we've got. And to compare the two, I think, is incongruous. And I summed it up, I think, Twitter-wise, in saying, look, what Al Gore had to say was, for better or for worse, the courts have spoken here, and I accept that. It makes me sad. I think we've got problems, but for better or for worse, that's our system. Let's move on, even though this means I'm conceding the presidency. I won the popular vote, but that's not what we count in this country. I think there's a chance that I would even have won the electoral vote if we had counted everything carefully and thoroughly in Florida. But the courts have ruled, and they have the final say in this. That's the system we've adopted. Thank you and good night. So basically that was it. For better or for worse, the courts have spoken. That is the system we have. I concede. Donald Trump, by contrast, hasn't gotten around to saying this about the election yet, but basically we know his view. The courts are Mexican. That's how he's going to approach it. I mean, post-election, could anybody envision, not least because it would require, it's not ridiculous, not least because it would require Trump to be elected as vice president for him to have to take that role on. But supposing it was available to him, is anybody able to envision Donald Trump standing up there and saying, as members of his party urge him to object and urge him to stop the proceedings and listen to what they have to say about how the whole thing is so unfair, him saying, no, it's beyond that now. It's now a direct question of, do we continue as a constitutional democracy or not? The republic survives if I put my ego aside and just say, that's it. And it was more than just his ego at stake, obviously, because there were lots of people saying, no, there's a real disenfranchisement issue. There are Democratic representatives from Florida saying, my state's votes are not being counted here. Please help me. And he said, it's a terrible thing. We've got to address that, but we've got to address it legislatively under a George W. Bush administration, because I can't undo what the courts have done. I don't even agree with the court decision. I don't even think that they approached it correctly. But that's what we've got. 5 justices for completely political reasons and without any legal basis whatsoever, and they were clear about that and admitted as much in their decision and urged that their decision never be used as precedent for anything, which is an extraordinary admission to make about how weak your reasoning is. And he still said, look, sometimes arbitrary stuff happens, and it happens 5-4, and that's what we've got. And that sucks, but it's bigger than what's happening here in this election. I don't see any path forward as a American loyal to the constitutional system at this point. The Supreme Court has ruled. They've ruled incorrectly, but they've ruled, and I'm out of here. And for a guy who insists that, the courts can't even be trusted to rule competently on his questions because they're Mexican, which they're not. I don't know. I don't see any path back from that. So, and you don't either, because you're being honest with yourself. There's a huge difference between the courts have spoken and the courts are Mexican and they're stupid and they don't work. So, that's what that's what I'll add to that mix. The rest of the stuff, of course, you're a puppet. That was a pretty amazing moment, and we didn't even get to speak about that one. But, and I don't know Putin. I don't know him. I don't know him. Okay, sure. I mean, you probably don't. But I thought that was kind of an interesting dodge. And, I don't know. He repeated that line in there somewhere in a way that was a total non sequitur, too. I got to scroll back and look at my own notes, which I take via Twitter, I guess, on how things happened last night. And that'll probably remind me of any talking points I wanted to bring up, but I guess rehearsing them would have been a good idea. Let's see. I want to point out Hillary Clinton has, I think, hit on the gold mine phrasing, like calling Marty McFly a chicken sets him off. She's got a lot of ways to needle him, but one of the automatics, I think, is the choke line. He loves to say that other people choked. And to have that said about him really sets him off. What did she say? She was talking about his visit to Mexico, and he wouldn't even bring up the wall with the Mexican president. He choked, and that really bothered him. And it didn't end up being a huge pivotal moment in the debate. But I like that she tested that out, and she ought to use it more often. And I use it actually with respect to the idiotic strategy of trying to win the debates by trying to figure out which magical guest can be invited that will transform the entire debate from a crushing defeat into a glorious victory. Not a single network that I'm aware of showed any of the guests, although I am told that Sarah Palin was visible post-debate on MSNBC. But I wonder if they put her in the spin room. I was wondering whether or not that was really what she was doing there. Like, as a guest, she doesn't make any sense. But then none of the guests made any sense. The one he was making so much of a big deal out of yesterday, we discussed it. Malik Obama. Did he make the camera anywhere? I think of that as a joke only because I think of the stunt they had planned last time where they were going to confront Bill Clinton directly with his so-called accusers, and they couldn't choreograph that, and that's the biggest choke I ever saw. To lay it, to bank so heavily on something like that, and then not to be able to pull it off. I really, that's pretty surprising. Let's see. Other things that I thought stood out were one, his line. I guess we're on 2 by now. His line about what do you need, a signed document? Now I can't even remember exactly what he was asking about. But I mean, it may have been about the election results again. But for some reason he responds to Chris Wallace, and he's fighting bitterly with Wallace over the premise of the question. I can't even remember what the question was. But I certainly remember them fighting about it, and he wouldn't let Wallace get his question out, and then he responded with it. What do you need, a signed document? Which I thought also maybe not really the place you want to go on that, because actually a signed document wouldn't be a bad idea right now. And I can think of at least one signed document, now that you mention it, that we'd all like to see and we're all waiting for. And we're all being kept in suspense for, right? He's going to keep us in suspense about whether or not he'll accept the election results. He's going to keep us in suspense about his taxes, about Melania's immigration status, about his charitable giving, and did he give away all the money that he said he was raising for vets, and what else? Any kind of policy whatsoever, how he's going to defeat ISIS. He's going to give the generals 30 days to come up with something, his genius plan. We're in suspense on everything. So I don't know. Let's see. And then, of course, there was the amazingly thin policy responses when he was given an opportunity to address policy. And as people said during the first half hour where he actually sort of attempted to do that. And one of Bill in Portland, Maine, yes, Bill's great comments that I saw early this morning. I think he made it last night, but I only picked up on it earlier this morning, is he crashes out in these debates. Even the debates he starts out trying to be, if not presidential, then at least standard candidate-ish in. He muffs it by about 30 minutes. I think if there was another debate, I would advise Hillary Clinton to pull out a Snickers bar around half hour into the thing and say, I mean, she should get paid for the endorsement there on that one, but pull that out. Donald, have a Snickers. And God help me if he won't say why. Because you're a real diva when you get hungry, and maybe that's it. Maybe he just needs to eat a taco bowl or something in between. Oh, yes, thank you. Dave Gilligan reminds me the do you need a signed document was related to whether or not Aleppo had been destroyed, which is another amazing moment. So it was, in fact, another crazy pivotal thing. I mean, it's one of the lesser points because foreign policy always gets less attention anyway. But yeah, that was the look at it. Look at Aleppo. Just look. It's fallen under any definition. It's fallen. And some great points also being made on Twitter last night about people saying, if you get all your news from YouTube videos about Aleppo, you'd think the entire city is in ruins and nobody's there anymore and everybody's dead and the only people there are ISIS fighters and we should just nuke it, which is something that Donald Trump says all the time. And that was another of his habits last night, denying things that he had said on tape and that had been widely viewed and widely distributed on video online, elsewhere, that we all have seen the video of him saying, and he would just, no, not true, never said that, always with his interruptions, no, wrong, it's a lie. And every time, he's already done it. And she hit him hard on that one. That was another moment I saw noted today as a top moment of the debate when Hillary Clinton said, just go and Google it. I encourage everybody to go and Google Donald Trump in Iraq and see what you get. And sure enough, the first things you're going to get is, yeah, we've been checking on that, and Donald Trump didn't oppose the Iraq war from the beginning. So that was kind of a score. And I saw somebody tweeting this morning, I guess somebody got the metrics of it, and millions of people went and did just like she said, Googled Donald Trump and Iraq. And probably a lot of them are Trump partisans who did it to prove that, to prove to themselves that Google is biased against them and their candidate. And so I don't know if it necessarily had the impact across the board that showing people the facts is likely to produce in a normal situation. But yes, if you get all your news about Aleppo from YouTube, you would not realize, as I saw from Kurt Eichenwald yesterday, that there are occasions upon which one might document normal life continuing in Aleppo, desperate as it may be, underlying, the desperation that underlies the whole thing is obvious. Aleppo's not in good shape, that's for sure, but yeah, that one was, that's the signed document. What do you need, a signed document that Aleppo's been destroyed? That would help, except then we'd just have you for perjury. And I wouldn't mind hanging you on perjury charges, but just another example of how, in the main, Donald Trump is just an ill-informed guy. He just doesn't have the kind of curiosity it takes to find out whether what he thinks is true. And a lot of us have that problem, but a lot of us, I think, are a little more adept at opening the door to it. If somebody said to me, if somebody had said to me yesterday, there's lots going on in Aleppo that is normal, and that's one of the reasons that it's so imperative to try and save them, I would say, really? Because I got the impression that Aleppo is in ruins through and through. And then people would say, no, you're actually wrong about that. And I would say, well, it looks like I am. Whereas Donald Trump says, no, wrong, untrue. What do you need, a signed document? I don't know. How about photos? Because that seems, I don't know. I guess I'd have to authenticate the photos if I'm in court. But apparently Aleppo, not the thoroughgoing disaster that Donald Trump would have you think, but that's probably because he, like me, has not actually studied the issue thoroughly. However, if I were running for president, I would say, you know what? Tell me something about Aleppo. I'd like to know. I'd like to know more about what's going on there for sure, especially if you say it's not as thoroughgoing a disaster as you think. Also, in the noted in the debate, more of Trump's black and white world and military views. Again, not only did she point out that he keeps insisting that everything is so black and white that you can safely use nuclear weapons to solve all your problems, which he then denied, but is in fact quite true. He was furious about the idea of announcing the offensive against Mosul. What about the element of surprise? All the generals, I tell you, Douglas MacArthur, General Patton, spinning in their graves. They're spinning in their graves because those are the only generals you can remember names for. But spinning in their graves, we're giving away the element of surprise. I mean, that's like, I think maybe the extent of a fourth or fifth grader's understanding of what might pass for military strategy or military operations. I mean, everyone prefers to have the element of surprise in a total warfare situation or in small operations like this. But it brought to mind a tweet I had seen earlier yesterday morning, which I thought was a good one, and I didn't get around to retweeting just before the show. but the comment came to mind, or the tweet came to mind when he made that comment. As it happens, it is the comment of P. Calith on Twitter, who is a follower and who is, as it happens, but who I don't believe we've called that name on the air before. And the handle name just says Calith, but the actual address at P. Calith, Calith, white male millennial Clinton voter, by way of reading the profile anyway. And this comment I thought was a terrific one, which was, I've now of course lost it because I went to see who was this person. And you can't do more than one thing on Twitter at any given time, apparently. But the comment was, this, by the way, is why you would announce an offensive. And it was a clip from, I don't know which paper. As soon as I scroll back down and find it again, here we go, from NBC News, as a matter of fact. And but the comment on it here is, this is incidentally why you announce an offensive. So an address to Donald Trump. Why would you give up the element of surprise? The only element I am familiar with in military strategy. NBC News, of course, reporting, hundreds of civilians flee into Syria as the U.S.-backed Iraqi forces advance on ISIS-held Mosul. So why would you announce a offensive ahead of time? Why would you give up the element of surprise? Because there's thousands of civilians there who we don't want to kill. And one of the things you do is you say, will this make the military conquest of Mosul more difficult? Yes, likely it will. Although it is, I guess one theory is no, it won't, because anybody who remains in Mosul at this point is likely an ISIS fighter or ISIS sympathizer. And you basically say, now, having given the opportunity to flee to neutral civilians, it's a free fire zone, and taking the city becomes actually simpler. Though the fighting may be harder because the other side may have spent that time digging in, it's a trade-off. And it's a trade-off that real, honest-to-God, trained and loyal military folks will take almost every time. Look, it's going to be harder for me. More of us may die. It is possible. But it's the civilians and preserving civilian life, innocent civilian life. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's what we're here for. We're going to take out ISIS so that more innocent civilians may live in the future. We know we may be killed in this offensive. That's what we signed up for. And then luckily, as it happens, we have some allies in this. And in fact, most of the fighting, as it points out here, is going to be done by U.S.-backed Iraqi forces. I don't doubt that we have a little bit more to do with that than I wish we would. But Trump's claim here is essentially, well, you don't give that information away. You just hit with the element of surprise. So his view of it is, whatever it takes to make it easiest for the people fighting on our side to not get killed, we should do. And he doesn't take into account, why are we fighting in the first place? If it's to save civilian life from the menace of ISIS, you can't be killing as many civilians as ISIS does and hoping that things will go well. It's actually one of those nuanced situations that he's really just unprepared for dealing with. I thought that was a very important point to make. Not to mention the fact that most of his answers were word salads, even during the first 30 minutes where he was apparently coherent or comparatively coherent. Still, most of his answers were basically, what do you think about the economy? The economy, let me tell you, it's so important, this economy. It's so economic, very big league economic. Absolutely, we got to do the economics, because when people do the economics, then things work. That's economics, and we got to do those economics economically. Thank you. That was his coherent statement. What do you think about Aleppo. It's so, take a look. Just look at it. Aleppo. It's so Aleppi. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see that it's Aleppo, and both inside Aleppo and outside Aleppo, everyone agrees that it's Aleppo, and we got to do something about the Aleppo. Thank you. That's really basically about the extent of his answers for anything, even his coherent ones. There was also other minor scoring points about the Chinese steel issues. And that was the one time that Hillary interjected on Donald Trump in the fashion in which he's usually interjecting. Right? I build beautiful buildings made with Chinese steel. that was actually pretty good. I guess that's the partisan part of me. I mean, if you don't like interruptions, then I guess you can't give her points for that one. But I don't know. That at some point it seemed like, okay, well now she's, if what's good for the goose is good for the gander here, except in reverse. But anyway, look at this. Here's something. Wow. I'm totally being distracted now. I'm seeing retweeted something from the Smoking Gun, which is not really my favorite place or anything. But I think they are largely telling the truth. But this one says, porn actress Stormy Daniels claimed affair with Donald Trump. Let's see. I wanted to comment on that for Twitter because I just saw her. Just saw her photos arriving at one of the many Trump event launch parties. The other day, and I was thinking, that's a weird arrival. I think it was for maybe was it one in L.A.? Was it the Trump vodka one? But I was just talking about his weird proclivity for launch parties. So I'm curious about the story. She's a weird person as it is, but she involved herself in politics. Remember when she was drawn into the Senate race in Louisiana? When I guess the first time that Vitter was running for re-election post-scandal, you remember? That's how she got involved in all that. Let me just take a look at this here. Donald Trump and the porn superstar. Is she really a superstar? This from the Smoking Gun. In mid-July 2006, Donald Trump traveled to State Line, Nevada to play in the American Century Celebrity Golf Championship, a 3-round tournament at the Edgewood Tahoe Links on the banks of Lake Tahoe. Trump was among 80 players, field stocked with athletes like Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and Mario Lemieux, as well as entertainers including Ray Romano and Cheech Marin. So that's the quality of the field. They're good players, no doubt. During one round, Trump's threesome included NFL quarterback Ben Roethlisberger and skier Bodie Miller. So Roethlisberger and Trump. That is some team. Is Bodie Miller, they say that as though, is Bodie Miller, does he have a sexual harassment problem? I'm not up on my skiers. Of the two women who competed, one was Carolyn Kepcher, a Trump Organization executive who co-starred with her boss in The Apprentice, which a month earlier concluded its 5th season on NBC. While Trump often bragged about his golfing prowess, he had a lousy showing at the tournament, which was broadcast by NBC. The real estate developer finished 62nd, 55 strokes behind the winner, actor Jack Wagner. Kepcher came in 78th, edging out Charles Barkley by a stroke. Though Trump finished the tournament's lower reaches, the weekend was not a total loss. While the billionaire's wife was at home with the couple's 4-month-old son, Trump struck up an acquaintance with a female celebrity who did not tee off, but rather worked the event. In a gifting suite, I almost said grifting suite, but it's the same thing, as you know from hearing our discussions about the gifting suites at, everywhere. And how, remember that story when Palin's entourage descended on the gifting suite of the Oscars like a swarm of locusts? In the gifting suite stocked with freebies for celebrity golfers, Trump met Stephanie Clifford, a porn actress known professionally as Stormy Daniels. Clifford, 27 at the time, had appeared in scores of X-rated films and, owing to her status as a contract girl with Wicked Pictures, was a household name in the adult film industry. What? As part of her deal with Wicked, Clifford would occasionally make promotional appearances on behalf of the film studio, which had launched the career of Jenna Jameson. Okay, at the Lake Tahoe tournament, this Clifford. Why does the Clifford name ring a bell? Okay. I think I was thinking of the name Max Clifford. No relation, I don't think, because Max Clifford is actually I think, British publicist who was somehow, just coincidentally, mixed up in the whole thing with Anthony Gilberthorpe and the way he was setting up the politicians and you remember that from the other day? I think it's just coincidence. Anyway, Clifford, 27 at the time, was she's greeting players at the Lake Tahoe tournament, sponsors and tournament officials at a booth stocked with Wicked swag. Wow. While some celebrities might have thought twice about taking a photo with the star of I forgot we will be walking into this porn movie titles. The star of Porking with Pride 2. It says number 2. I don't know whether that really did they put the number sign in there. Porking with Pride number 2 and Spreading My Seed. Well, comedians Kevin Nealon and Anthony Anderson had no such reservations. Okay, so they could get away with it. Nor did Trump, who posed next to Clifford in front of a backdrop with a repeating Wicked logo. As seen above, the businessman wore khakis and a golf shirt and hat with the Trump National Golf Club logo. Clifford, not dressed for 18 holes, wore a tight black crop top. The photo op between the married billionaire and the porn star would be the start of a relationship that would prompt whispers in the adult film community, according to TSG, the smoking gun sources. He's a civilian. There's a porn star there. I guess it's funny to take your picture with a porn star, and he loves to take his picture with buxom blondes, whether they are porn stars or not. And was she famous yet? Is this 2006? When was she already famous for having tried to inject herself into that Senate race? Okay. Look, you got a picture taken, fine. But apparently there's more. In fact, it says Clifford confided to friends that she engaged in a sexual affair with Trump, whom she claimed had promised to help her get cast on The Apprentice or another TV show. Play your cards right, honey, and I'll put you into my vertical integration program. See? Clifford did not respond to TSG requests for comments on her dealings with Trump. At the time Clifford met Trump, she was between marriages. We have to fill that in because we got to check whether the porn star is moral enough here. She was between marriages, so it's cool. And living with Michael Mosney, who later became her second husband. In a series of interviews, Mosney recalled that after Clifford met Trump at the Nevada golf tournament, where she had dinner one night with the mogul and Roethlisberger. Wow. She maintained contact with the businessman. So there you go. I guess that's between him and Roethlisberger. She chose to maintain contact with him. Trump, Mosney said, would dial the couple's Los Angeles home and chat with Clifford, who sometimes put the calls on speakerphone. Mosney recalled that Trump invited Clifford to the January 2007 launch of Trump Vodka. Paparazzi photos show that Trump, his son Donald Jr., Kim Kardashian, and Clifford, accompanied by fellow porn star Tara Patrick, attended the party at Les Deux nightclub in L.A. In March 2007, at Trump's invitation, Clifford attended the Trump-owned Miss USA pageant at L.A.'s Kodak Theater. Mosney recalled driving Clifford to the venue, but he did not attend the pageant. Attending the Miss USA pageant was beneath the dignity of the guy who married the porn star, I guess. On another occasion, Mosney said Clifford met with Trump one evening at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Ooh, his favorite haunt. Additionally, during a trip to New York, Clifford stopped by Trump's Manhattan office, Mosney recalled. Asked about the nature of Clifford's relationship with Trump, Mosny, who married Clifford in November 2007, said that he was not under the impression that she had an affair with the tycoon. It would be surprising, but not shocking, said Mosny, who added that Clifford had many celebrity fans, some of whom became friends with the porn star. And I'm sure that that's likely true as well. We know Donald Trump watches porn. I mean, he's said that he watched Paris Hilton's sex tape, even though he knew her and her family and had met her when she was 12. So he's not averse to it. I know that. So he may very well be a fan, and I could see where a person very well might say, "Hey, this is a person." You know, if you're going to be watching porn and watching a lot of it, that you familiarize yourself with the people who are in the movies, then I guess you get to be a fan. I don't know how you get to be a fan of somebody in there. Why not? I guess. But, I mean, they're not doing anything. There's no acting going on, right? Like, oh, there's a person engaging in sexual activity, as many people do. I'm such a fan of that. She does it so well. I suppose some people do it well and some people don't, and you might as well. He loves to rank people. So on a scale of 1 to 10, that was a great bit of, we're on the radio, sexual activity of some kind. There, I give it a 9. So would I like to sit down and have a taco bowl with somebody like that? Sure, why not? I'm going to be eating taco bowls anyway. I might as well be eating taco bowls with the person who did that thing so well. Why not? Talk to the experts, I say. All right. So it would be surprising but not shocking, says Mosny. I think probably Mosny's ready for just about anything. While Mosny knew of his girlfriend's contacts with the New York billionaire, it seems unlikely that Melania Trump would have been aware that her husband of 18 months had struck up a friendship with an adult film actress who would later be inducted into the porn industry's Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Stormy. Well done. See, I told you she was good at it. Mosny said that Clifford told him that Trump had claimed that the porn star could potentially appear as a contestant on The Apprentice. She was definitely under the impression that this could happen, said Mosny, who added that he recalled Clifford mentioning Dancing with the Stars as another possible TV vehicle for her. That's interesting. Does he think he has some editorial control over Dancing with the Stars because of his relationship with NBC, or was he just throwing out ideas? I wonder whether, I'm sure that he probably thought he could arrange for her to be on The Apprentice. I wonder whether maybe the rest of the NBC crowd said, or Mark Burnett said, I'm not willing to open it up to the porn stars. Although, why not? I mean, she's not going to be naked on the show. But, I don't know. They may have sensibilities about that. Mosny, who works in the porn industry, is divorced from Clifford. So, okay, he's probably prepared for all of this. In July 2009, Clifford was arrested on a misdemeanor battery charge for allegedly striking Mosny during an argument in their residence. In late 2011, Clifford sought a restraining order against Mosny, from whom she was divorced. A judge, however, dismissed Clifford's application a month after it was filed. That doesn't seem that important, but there you go. Following the Nevada golf tournament, Clifford uploaded a photo to MySpace. Why? Showing her posing with Trump. I guess that's safe enough. The image was the only public reference to her contact with the billionaire until October 2011. That month, a post on The Dirty, a site run by blogger Nick Ritchie, alleged that Trump cheated on his wife with an unnamed woman who was pretty well known. Maybe her, right? In a communication sent to the site, a source claimed that Trump met the woman after one of his golfing events, and he lured her to multiple hotel rooms after that. The source claimed that Trump ruined my girlfriend's marriage. The world-exclusive post also declared that if Donald Trump or his people were reading the item, code word Dancing with the Stars. So a little bit of verification there. While the post itself did not identify the woman, Ritchie, whose real name is Human Karamian, directly addressed Trump with an appended comment. Mr. Donald Trump, as a man, please come forward with honesty. I know you cheated on your wife with Stephanie Gregory Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels. And now the world knows. Karamian then warned, I will be detailing the events and locations, so choose your words wisely. Wow. Ritchie declared that he was confronting Trump since in media, and this is 2011, in media there are heroes and there are cowards. The cowards become friends with the enemy for personal gain, and the heroes save others from the sickos of the world who hide behind their money and power. Yowza. The Dirty's post, which received little traction in other gossip outlets, prompted immediate denials from Trump and Clifford. A Gossip Cop story, another site, I guess, reported that Trump's camp called the story totally untrue and ridiculous, as they usually do. An E! Online story reported that Clifford said she was not commenting, but the story is BS. In response to Clifford's comments, Richie wrote on The Dirty, Stormy, if the story is BS, why did you hire attorney Keith Davidson? The lawyer Richie knew was famous for representing individuals seeking to pursue legal claims against celebrities. In a 3-page letter to The Dirty, Davidson accused the site of the unauthorized use of his client's name and celebrity in a post that states my client had a sexual affair with a married man. Davidson contended that Ms. Daniels' name is being used in order to lure potential customers to your commercial filth, which is an awfully interesting thing to accuse somebody of peddling if you are representing a porn star, but hey, maybe it's not filthy. She does the clean stuff. I don't know. Whatever. I don't even know if it's worth going on this. I mean, this is not like a huge story. I'll leave it at this, I guess. Although I don't know. Now it seems to get into more. Like, are there allegations that there are even more people involved? Let's see here. Clifford's attempt to cash in on her Trump relationship was largely orchestrated by Gina Rodriguez. I guess we might as well put all this stuff together in light of our having recently read about the way Trump operated with his modeling agency, and I have the feeling that the next installment of that is ready to drop sometime soon. We might as well get used to some of the names in his network. Clifford's attempt to cash in on her Trump relationship was largely orchestrated by Gina Rodriguez, a former porn actress who had transitioned into representing D-list reality TV and tabloid figures looking to monetize their fleeting fame via personal appearances, staged photo shoots, and stories sold to TMZ and other gossip outlets. That's a business, I guess. Rodriguez has represented Michael Lohan, Tila Tequila, and Nadia Suleiman, that's Octomom, who gave birth to octuplets in 2009. As part of her representation of the mother of 14, Rodriguez produced Octomom Home Alone, a 2012 porn film, starring Suleiman, that was released by Wicked Pictures. Rodriguez, who is something of a mistress whisperer, signed up numerous women eager to detail their sexual encounters with Tiger Woods and Charlie Sheen. Rodriguez also represented Sydney Leathers, the original Anthony Weiner sexting partner. Wow. A 2014, it's interesting that they're all so closely, there's only 1 or 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon in that, given how often Trump invokes the Anthony Weiner name. A 2014 New York Times story reported that Leathers reached out to Ms. Rodriguez through Nick Ritchie of the gossip blog TheDirty.com. Wow. What a tight little circle of friends we have here. So when Clifford wanted to sell her Trump story, she turned to Rodriguez. The women had met years earlier when Rodriguez was married to Randy Spears, a porn actor with whom Clifford performed. That's got to be an interesting relationship. Goodness. Well, it does seem to get involved here. I think that's probably the end of the useful information, if any of this was useful to you. Wow. Okay. Well, just keeping up to date on the latest sordid rumors that could come spinning out of all this. I mean, I think we beat the debate to death largely and got through almost all of the commentary that I think it's worth repeating from last night. Okay. Well, let's see. Other stories that I have tucked away in pocket that I think are required discussion material. Let's see. First of all, I enjoyed this one. Just, I guess, 1 or 2 more things about the debate include, let's see, I enjoyed this thing. I did see 1 or 2 tweets from this. One of the hashtag games that grew out of it was Trump Book Report tweets. This from the Huffington Post. Ed Mazza writes this one under the headline of, I'm going to have to pause some auto-playing video here in just a second. You've got to wait for it to start in order to hit the button, of course. You know how these things work. Donald Trump's clueless debate answers spawn hashtag Trump Book Report tweets. Pinocchio, he's no puppet. No puppet. You're the puppet. Remember that? All right. Well, that didn't involve Pinocchio at the time. But okay. It began, like so many viral hashtags, with a single tweet. Antonio French behind this one, as a matter of fact. St. Louis Alderman Antonio French, in case you didn't remember, fired off a tweet highlighting how unprepared Donald Trump sounded when discussing foreign policy during Wednesday night's presidential debate with Hillary Clinton. They thankfully have linked to Hillary Clinton, in case you don't know who she is. Even the Huffington Post not shedding that entirely. His tweet, Trump's foreign policy answers sounded like a book report from a teenager who hasn't read the book. Oh, the grapes. They had so much wrath. Oh, interesting. Now, that was tweeted at 10:23 p.m., and I had by that time seen the tweet from another person I follow on Twitter who's a comedian, and so I say that they're a comedian by way of pointing out they'll be angry if somebody finds out that their joke was stolen. Let me see if I can find it from last night. Now I'm curious about when I saw it. Sean Crespo is the comedian I had in mind. And, let me see what time did he say, because that's the Grapes of Wrath thing. I saw that one and retweeted it, and his version of it was, oh, those grapes were full of wrath. You wouldn't believe these grapes. So much wrath. 14-year-old Trump book report on the Grapes of Wrath. And it's not hashtagged with but let's see, 10 hours ago. 11, that's funny. Well, it looks like Antonio wins on that one, although 11:47, that would be my local time, 11:47 that he sent that. And what about, I'm doing the forensics on this. Antonio French, if he's in St. Louis, what time zone is that? That's the really serious issue. Where did this go? Antonio French's tweet. I guess I need to see that original with timestamped for my time zone. But where is it now? I guess I'm really going to have to go all the way back here. Why wouldn't it just bring me to the one I wanted? Here we go. How about this? Let me open it up here this way. Okay, 10:23 p.m. and Crespo. I know this is really not that critical. It was 11:47. So there you go. The comedian probably didn't steal it from them because they're sensitive about those things. But it is interesting that the Grapes of Wrath comes up in both of them. Okay, so kudos there to Antonio French scoring with that hashtag, and there were some pretty good ones that went out there, and they're collected. The best of them are collected in this Huffington Post piece, which I'll share with you. Let's see if there are any that really score with us here. Juliet, such a nasty woman. She made Romeo kill himself, and believe me, she could have done better. Look at her. Yeah? Uncle Tom's Cabin, worst cabin in the inner city. Terrible schools, nasty women, and bad hombres everywhere. There's a lord, and he's got rings, lots of rings, the best rings, and 2 of the best towers anyone has ever seen. It's pretty good. All right, well, there are more, and I will share that with you, and Scott Anderson will happily link to it so you can all enjoy them on your own time. But if you're here and I'm here, doesn't that make it our time? Yeah. Well, if it's our time, then we really have to spend it on something slightly more important. At least I feel that way. Let's see. One other thing, I guess, from the debate, also from the Huffington Post, interestingly enough. I really need to do more work on finding my sources at Daily Kos. I need to speak with them about that. I think we need to step up our Twitter game a little bit, perhaps. I wonder if I can help with that. I'll see if I can work that out, everybody. But in the meantime, the Huffington Post. I find that I'm retweeting the Huffington Post and Talking Points memo all the time, and The Hill, which sucks. And I should be doing this for Daily Kos instead. And I don't know. I got to analyze what I find is, what is it that's lacking? How come I don't get hit in the face with Daily Kos tweets the way I do with these other publications? Our stuff is better than that, and I need to spend more time promoting it, I think. Sam Levine at Huffington Post, though, has this piece that I wanted to talk about. Megyn Kelly destroyed Trump's spokesman. I don't like the destroyed use in the headline, but whatever. Destroyed Trump's spokesman when he tried to discredit Trump's accusers. And there was this I think, interesting exchange in maybe the worst spin I've ever heard on anything. But here's the setup. Fox host Megyn Kelly pressed Donald Trump's campaign spokesman, one of them anyway, to explain why the candidate denied disparaging the looks of several accusers, something he clearly had done. During an interview following the presidential debate on Wednesday, Kelly rejected the suggestion by Jason Miller, he's one of the top names among Trump's senior communications staff, that several women who recently came forward to accuse Trump of sexual assault were doing so for fame and to influence the election. These people didn't come out when Mr. Trump was running The Apprentice and had a 12-year run at the absolute top of the ratings. They didn't come forward when he announced, Miller said. The comment prompted Kelly to cut in and say they came forward after he says he likes to grab them by the crotch and then denied he'd ever done it. During the debate on Wednesday, that's true, Trump denied that he'd claimed the women weren't attractive enough for him to assault. But Kelly played several clips of the GOP nominee doing just that. Now, this is great. Miller initially just tried to repeat that the accusations were false, but Kelly cut him off and asked him to explain why Trump had disparaged the looks of the women accusing him. And this is the worst spin ever. Miller says he was clearly talking about their words. Would I do that? Would I assault her? Look at her face. What does that have to do with their words? They were clearly talking about their words. That's laugh test material. That isn't even, I'm sorry. I can't help you. That's literally the worst, most desperate spin I've ever heard about anything. And I didn't even hear it. I read it. So he was clearly talking about their words. Kelly followed up by asking why Trump had specifically referred to looks. Miller again repeated the claim that that their claims weren't credible. You could tell from her face that she wasn't credible, Kelly asked. Miller then gave up trying to defend what his candidate has said. What people want to see is who's going to be the leader that's going to get this country back on track. That's what people want to talk about. They're not talking about this, Megan. Everybody's talking about this. That was one of the least successful spin outings I've ever seen in my life. He just really flopped on that one. They were clearly talking about their words. Clearly not, I think. All right. Let's see. Also, I guess, just noting for the record, we'll do things a little quickly on this one. Vanity Fair has a piece out, which I will share with you, alleging that Donald Trump and Roger Ailes are no longer working together, in fact, no longer speaking. That's the title of the piece here by Emily Jane Fox. Bad blood, Donald Trump and Roger Ailes reportedly no longer speak. And depending on who you talk to, the story is different. Each side has their own spin on it. Roger Ailes says he's giving up because the candidate is hopeless and he wasn't paying any attention to his efforts to prep him for the debate. By contrast, Donald Trump says, I wasn't paying any attention because your efforts to prep me for the debate really consisted of nothing more than telling your own campaign war stories. We've actually heard that story before. But now there's a split. And what does that do for... what does that do for the Trump TV rumors? That was another thing. That's still not the thing that I was trying to remember just after Greg left. But that was in my mind right alongside it. So maybe that'll somehow trigger the memory. But the last couple days have been all about saying, everybody's returning to he's definitely going to launch Trump TV after the campaign is over. I'm still not entirely sure about that. I don't know who funds anything. I don't know who lends him anything. I don't know who does any contractual business with Trump after this, but somebody will, I guess. But I think if this would have to put a dent in things if Roger Ailes is on the outs with him, because I imagine they would turn to him to help run the thing. But I guess he could. If there's cash in it, I guess he could still come back and do a consultancy thing. I guess this isn't the final nail in the coffin, necessarily of certainly not a nail in the coffin of a terrible idea that they probably really only want to use to leverage seed money and loans and then take off and abscond with that. It doesn't really matter whether the thing is going to float. So I guess it doesn't really matter whether Ailes is available or not. All right. Let's see. Other things that are important to share here, or maybe not so much important, but would be entertaining to share nonetheless. Let's see. We'll save this one because it's relatively serious, I guess. Where else can we go? Oh, yes. Yesterday I mentioned that, you know what? First, follow up with the issue of that Joan raised yesterday on the Supreme Court nominations, and Merrick Garland in particular, but actually she was talking about pending judicial nominations who would more than likely be renominated in the 17 days between the convening of the next Congress, which may have a Democratic majority, and the inauguration of the next president, which may be Hillary Clinton, for instance. But on the question of Merrick Garland's appointment and what to do about it, here's an idea that got floated in the Washington Post, which, am I going to be able to double check the authorship before this thing fades out? No, I obviously love great journalism, and the Washington Post knows it, and I've passed my 10 clicks now. But the pocket view of this thing indicates that we're looking at Gregory L. Discant as the author of this piece. Discant, I guess it's confirmed here by this note underneath the picture. Gregory L. Discant is a senior partner at the law firm Patterson, Belknap, Webb, and Tyler, and a member of the National Governing Board of Common Cause. And here's the pitch. Obama can appoint Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court if the Senate does nothing. What? I was asked to review this on Twitter and give a quick opinion on what did I think of this proposal. So check out this idea. On November 12, 1975, while I was serving as a clerk to Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, Gregory Discant says, Justice William O. Douglas resigned. On November 28th, President Gerald R. Ford nominated John Paul Stevens for the vacant seat. 19 days after receiving the nomination, the Senate voted 98-0 to confirm the president's choice. 2 days later, I had the pleasure of seeing Ford present Stevens to the court for his swearing in. The business of the court continued unabated. There were no 4-4 decisions that term. Today, the system seems to be broken. Both parties are at fault, gee whiz, seemingly locked into a death spiral to outdo the other in outrageous behavior. Whatever. Now, the Senate has simply refused to consider President Obama's nomination of Judge Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, dozens of nominations to federal judgeships and executive offices are pending before the Senate, many for more than a year. Our system prides itself on its checks and balances, but there seems to be no balance to the Senate's refusal to perform its constitutional duty. All right, as far as this goes. The Constitution glories in its ambiguities. And it is possible to read its language to deny the Senate the right to pocket veto the president's nominations. How so? Start with the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. It provides that the president, quote, shall nominate and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint judges of the Supreme Court and all other officers of the United States. Note that the president has two powers, the power to nominate and the separate power to appoint. In between the nomination and the appointment, the president must seek the, quote, advice and consent of the Senate, unquote. What does that mean? And what happens when the Senate does nothing? In most respects, the meaning of advice and consent. That clause, the meaning is obvious. The Senate can always grant or withhold consent by voting on the nominee. The narrower question starkly presented by the Garland nomination is what to make of things when the Senate simply fails to perform its constitutional duty. It is altogether proper to view a decision by the Senate not to act, he says, as a waiver of its right to provide advice and consent. Well, that's the biggest leap. A waiver is an intentional relinquishment or abandonment of a known right or privilege. As the Supreme Court has said, quote, no procedural principle is more familiar to this court than that of a constitutional right, or of a right of any other sort, that may be forfeited in a criminal as well as civil case by the failure to make timely assertion of the right before a tribunal having jurisdiction to determine it. Now he reads that this way. It is in full accord with the traditional notions of waiver to say that the Senate, having been given a reasonable opportunity to provide advice and consent to the President with respect to the nomination of Garland, and having failed to do so, can fairly be deemed to have waived its right, although that's a tougher thing to do. And I think in most of the cases where they're talking about waiver of rights, it's when a timely objection hasn't been made. There's there's statutory or at least rules-based limitations on what defines timeliness. And there's no such rule here to lean on. If you have, by statute, 90 days to do something and you don't do it in the 90 days, it's a lot easier to consider that a waiver because there's a bright line rule about when you get to consider, or even if it doesn't say it's in the statute that shall thereafter be considered a waiver, it's the only possible construction of the fact that you've drawn this bright line. But where there's no bright line drawn, I'm not so sure. But okay, it's an argument, right? Here's how that would work, he goes on to explain. The president has nominated Garland and submitted his nomination to the Senate. The president should advise the Senate that he will deem its failure to act by a specified reasonable date in the future to constitute a deliberate waiver of its right to give advice and consent. I mean, could that be done? You could. Why not? Sure, you can put anything you want to paper. They won't agree to it, but why not? And it's not terribly damaging to the Constitution to assert that. The question is how to sort it out afterwards. And that can be done better or worse. But what date, for instance, would you give on this? Where would you draw the line? Well, he goes on to explain that the historical average between nomination and confirmation is 25 days. The longest wait has been 125 days. That suggests that 90 days is a perfectly reasonable amount of time for the Senate to consider Garland's nomination. And in the abstract, I would agree with that. Sure. Would I extend that to say that if after 90 days they haven't done it, then something of substance actually can happen? Like you can actually just put a guy on the court? Well, I haven't gotten there yet. If the Senate fails to act by the assigned date, Obama could conclude that it has waived its right to participate in the process, and he could exercise his appointment power by naming Garland to the Supreme Court. There's where we run into problems. Presumably, the Senate would then bring suit challenging the appointment. This should not be viewed as a constitutional crisis, but rather as a healthy dispute between the President and the Senate about the meaning of the Constitution. I can accept that. I mean, I'm sorry we got there, but I can accept it. This kind of thing has happened before. In 1932, the Supreme Court ruled that the Senate did not have the power to rescind a confirmation vote after the nominee had already taken office. More recently, the court determined that recess appointments by the president were no longer proper because the Senate no longer took recesses. Which, by the way, I think, could be easily made a part of the argument in favor of a procedure like this. 90 days is per se reasonable because they no longer take recesses. What are you worried about? 90 days would be 90 days in session because they don't take recesses. Anyway, it would break the logjam in our system to have this dispute decided by the Supreme Court, presumably with Garland recusing himself. We could restore a sensible system of government if it were accepted that the Senate has an obligation to act on nominations in a reasonable period of time. The threat that the president could proceed with an appointment if the Senate failed to do so would force the Senate to do its job, providing its advice and consent on a timely basis so that our government can function. On the whole, it's not a terrible suggestion, and I like the conclusion better than the suggestion, really. The idea that it actually meshes very well with the rest of the checks and balances in the system. Essentially, you give the opportunity to provide advice and consent, and you put a little bit of pressure on them that there needs to be a reasonable time during which they handle this thing. Otherwise, he can provide a check on the intransigence of the Senate. So what I was asked, do I think about this as a proposal, as a system? And it's all right. I don't have any serious objections to it as a proposed idea. I don't know whether I am particularly enamored of the idea of just sort of throwing that out there and saying, yeah, you know what, I want to add something basically to the Constitution. Here, this is it. I'll write you a letter that says everything changes after 90 days, and that's just going to be the way it is. Well, if it rises to the level of a constitutional matter, then we really have to have, I think, a little more discussion and validation of the idea along the way. But I guess one thing that, in addition to suing, I'm sure the Senate would sue, and they probably should, honestly, if it's presented to them this way. But, what do I think would happen if a letter like that was sent? Well, I think it would probably go a little something like this. I mean, this close to the election anyway. He sends the letter, says he got 90 days. So the Senate says, all right, on day 89, I vote no. There you go. Because right now, a majority in the Senate just says, you know what? Not only am I voting no, but I'm voting no because of the arrogance of the president, not even because of the fitness of the nominee. I love the nominee. He's a fantastic guy. It's too bad he has to be the sacrificial lamb here. But the arrogance of the president writing to me that there's a 90-day time limit on advice and consent, says who? No. I reject this. And to be honest, I'm not even 100% certain that a Democratic Senate doesn't do the same, although there's no reason to believe that they would delay 90 days in considering the nomination. But anyway, I just thought that was sort of an interesting theory that was out there. There's certainly nothing preventing the president from making that kind of assertion. And things only really get hairy when, after 90 days, you see Garland showing up at the court and saying, I believe this chair is mine. And then I guess not only does the Senate sue, but there's some question about what the court does. I mean, does the court, here's a real question, does the court have standing to object on its own behalf to the seating of a new justice? And what if 4 of them say I object and 4 of them say I don't? So you may be inviting more of a constitutional crisis than you originally anticipated. But it's an interesting idea and something worth considering. And I just thought I'd throw it out there for a consideration in the mix. I guess we'll add to that while we're throwing out sort of interesting, weird theories about the Constitution. There's another piece I've been holding on to for some time that maybe we can squeeze in a little bit of discussion of, if I can find it. I don't know whether I need to scroll up or down from this, but this was something that I believe that Kate Sherrill sent to me some time ago, and the issue was what's his name? I can't even remember the guy's name who's running as the Donald Trump alternative that everybody was laughing at way back when, but who's apparently polling quite well in Utah. And there was some theorizing about it's Evan is it McMillan? I can't even remember. I can't bring the guy's name to mind. He's really not doing that great in terms of getting people to notice him as a candidate. I've seen his name come up a couple of times with people just basically chuckling that he's actually still in the race. But here's the issue. The theory was he may well prevent Donald Trump from winning Utah. And so what, right? I mean, big deal. But the theory in this one was if he were to win Utah and therefore capture Utah's electoral votes, he would then be able to contest the election in the House of Representatives because he'd come in third in the electoral vote count. But of course, all of this requires not just his winning Utah. What it actually requires is a electoral vote tie or an inconclusive result in the electoral vote count. That is to say, no one getting 270 votes. And so the whole thing begins to collapse under the weight of what is beginning to look like an electoral blowout for Hillary Clinton. McMullen. Thank you, Gideon, for bringing that one back to mind. I cannot tell you why I can't find the article now, but maybe I can search my Pocket list here. Pocket just really, I'll tell you what, the search function of Pocket is no good either. If the word you're seeking isn't in the headline, I can't type in McMullen and pull anything up. Is Utah going to be any better? I don't know. That doesn't appear to bring anything up either. So, I don't know. You tell me what's going on here with Pocket. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that one. I thought it would have been interesting to read through the theorizing, but it was clearly written at a time when it was somehow believable that there was a way to prevent Hillary Clinton from getting 270 electoral votes, and I just don't think that that's any longer operative. But the idea here, the theory was that if McMullen was able to win Utah, that would deny it to Hillary Clinton, who would then be unable to cobble together 270 votes, and then that would throw the election to the House of Representatives, and they would opt, because they are dominated by Republicans, and each of the state delegations, which vote as one unit, would be dominated by Republicans, thanks to gerrymandering, by the way. And they would opt for a conservative / Republican who wasn't Trump. And that the rules are that they get to choose from among the top 3 finishers in the electoral vote count, which wouldn't be of any interest, of course, if McMullen didn't win Utah, because then he wouldn't be in that top 3, and they'd be stuck with the other 2. But I guess the theory was that they'd sneak him through in Utah because of his Mormonism and officially get him on the list of choices because he would have some electoral votes to his credit. And it looks like that there's apparently polling of Utah that claims that McMullen is in fact in the lead there and that he may in fact win it. It just won't make any difference in the end because there won't be any doubt about whether or not Hillary Clinton can cobble together 270 electoral votes. So that'll wind things up on that score. Okay. Well, there's plenty more to get to. Unfortunately, lots of time was spent, 1, talking about Stormy Daniels, but I actually enjoyed that. That was fun. And 2, looking for this Utah article and not coming up with it. So tomorrow, we're going to see whether Josie Duffy Rice will join us again for more fascinating discussion about the state of the judiciary and the judicial system as it pertains, of course, to our upcoming election, and also gets us a little bit off of the topic of the immediacy of the election and dives into some deeper issues that you will enjoy, no doubt, being able to discuss, sounding really super smart over the weekend with all of your friends. Plus, of course, tomorrow I do need to catch up a little bit on what's happening in the gun fail situation. Lots of fun and interesting stories, and of course some tragic and horrible ones too. Not likely to change your mind, but likely to keep the issue in mind. And remember, we get to decide on our path forward on that issue in November as well. Okay, what's coming up on the after show today? It's Thursday. That means it's Thank God It's Giovedì, and you never miss your chance to say a word in Italian, in my opinion. A Louisiana state law that went into effect earlier this year to prevent immigrants from marrying, hey, why not, is affecting U.S. citizens, too. Oops, unforeseen complications. What do you know? Donald Trump's top economic advisor says the investor protection rule is slavery. Everything's slavery to those guys. And the California Attorney General's office has launched a criminal investigation into the Wells Fargo account scandal after CEO John Stumpf resigns. Hopefully this time a securities fraud investigation rather than a consumer fraud investigation. Thank you, David Dayan, for pointing out that amazing and startling fact. Haven't seen a lot of movement toward that, but it's absolutely 100% right. So glad to have him on our side.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
On the last half of today's show, they'll be reporting that journalist Joe Conison has a few thought experiments on hacking Julian Assange's emails, and D.A. Pennebaker's film The War Room showed the 1992 Clinton campaign was an engine of anti-establishment politics. How about that? All coming up next on the After Show.